Hello and welcome in my latest game, in my attempt to go back to the rating of 2000 on Lichess Rapid. In this game I'm facing the strongest opponent so far in this series, so you can see he has the rating of 1965, so I figured that this will be an interesting game, and indeed it was. And as you will see, we both had some tactical opportunities which we have missed. Well, because 15 minutes is not like it's blitz, but it's still a short time to do some serious calculation and to spend time on some critical positions. For this reason, we missed some tactics, but it was an interesting game nevertheless. So I opened the game with d4, and he responded with d6. So already I was thinking that maybe he was going for the old Indian or some kind of hippopotamus defense. So I continued with knight f3, and he played e6. And now the hippopotamus defense is when you play these pawns here, and then you fianchetto your bishops, and you bring your knights here. So I was thinking that he will play something like this, and there is also something called Semi-hippopotamus, which is a similar setup, but one of these pawns go 2 squares forward. So as you will see, he played some kind of Semi-hippopotamus, and then he abandoned it at some moment. So I continued with e3, and now here he played h6, which is in accordance with hippopotamus. And now I was thinking, should I go c4 immediately, or should I stick to my cold Zukertort system and try to play this positionally? And I decided to do this, so I played bishop to d3, he went with g5. So I would call this some kind of semi-hippopotamus. I responded with h3, just stopping the advancement of the pawn. He fianchettoed his bishop. And now I played c4 finally, because obviously he will be playing this passively, so I want to have my pieces active. Now he played knight to d7, again sticking with the hippopotamus system. Now I have developed my knight b to d2, he played the knight to e7, and now I played b3, wanted to fianchetto my bishop as well. So these two bishops will be aiming at each other. And now he decided to go for the break and played e5. Okay, I took the pawn. Now he took back with the knight, hitting my bishop. And I like my bishop, so I just took the knight back. And he took with the pawn. And now, as you can see, my bishop is hanging, so I have to play bishop to c2. And now he decided to challenge my bishop with bishop f5, which, okay, develops a piece, but in some future I expect that this pawn will be blocked here on e5, which will make his dark square bishop a bad bishop and his light square bishop a good bishop. So this exchange maybe is not something he wants, but okay, at this moment I don't want it either, because I don't want him to activate his knight so easily. So I played bishop to b2, continuing with my plan, and now he played queen to d7, so maybe wanting to castle long, maybe wanting to double up here and also supporting this bishop. And now I did decide to take this bishop for the reasons I have mentioned. He did take with the knight, and okay, this knight looks active, but basically he doesn't have any good forward squares. He only has this square on the rim, which I'm not too worried about. So here I have decided to develop my queen on f3, hitting this pawn, and also making pressure on this knight. So he played c6, blocking this diagonal, and I played rook to d1. Now I'm aligning my rook with the queen, and he's not worried about this at the moment, so he just doubles along the d file. Now I castled, why not, connecting the rooks, putting king to safety finally, and he played knight to h4, hitting my queen, and this is the only forward move for the knight, which could be useful, but at the moment I'm not worried. And now I have several options. I decided to play queen to e4, with the idea maybe to bring the queen back to c2, because you can see that my knight is defended only once, and if this knight were to move, for example here, then he can trade the queen for 2 rooks, which could be good for him. I'm never sure is it good to give 2 rooks for the queen, but here it could be good because he can easily coordinate his rooks. So I didn't want this, so I played this centralizing move, intending to go to c2 and just hold the position. So here he played f5, which, okay, gains space with the tempo, but on the other hand, this king is now very unsafe. He cannot castle long, so he will probably castle short, and he doesn't have any pawns around his king. So I'm not sure that this overextension makes sense. So I just played queen to c2, he castled short, and now I was thinking about this move knight to f3, activating my knight, hitting this pawn, and notice from this moment on, this pawn will be a constant weakness. Because I'm hitting it once, he's defending it once, and now I'll try to win this pawn throughout the game. So I was thinking about knight to f3 at some point, and I didn't want him to take with the tempo, so I played king to h1, which is not the best move, but I don't like when I have the knight near my king that he can check at any time. I just want to play this safe. Now he played queen to f7, moving the queen away from the pin, and at the same time still supporting the pawn. And now here I was thinking what to do with my pieces. So this bishop is okay. I mean, these heavy pieces are also okay. I don't want to play knight to f3 and just double the pawns. So I played a little bit risky move, which paid off later, and this is c5. So the idea of c5 is to make space for my knight here on c4, and then you can see that I have the outpost here on d6. So this was the idea, but there was one critical move which I had to consider, and he played this move. This is rook to d5, now hitting my pawn, but it's okay because my pawn is protected by the queen. But now if I were to play knight to c4, then he could just take my pawn. But here I have a response, and this is e4. So this is now the point of double attack. If he moves the rook, then he just loses the pawn, so he has to take the pawn, and I'm activating my knight here on the other square. And also you can see that this pawn is now isolated and also blockaded. So when you have isolated pawn, the ideal square for the knight is in front of the pawn, because this is an outpost, it cannot be challenged by the pawn. And also now this pawn is blocked, and I will be able maybe to exploit this weakness in the future. And now here he decided to trade one pair of rooks. This is fine with me, because now if you look at this position, I have the control of the only open file on the board. This is the D file. So now in this position I would say that I must be better, because I have the control over the open file. My knight is very active. You can see that I have the outpost. I have this possibility of check maybe in the future. So my knight is a beast here. And also my bishop is active because it's attacking a pawn. So this bishop is bound to defend the pawn and so forth. So I like my position here a lot. So here he played queen to f5. Now my knight is pinned. I have to be careful about this. And also you might have noticed that he is pressuring my f2 pawn all the time. So this is one of the consequences of this f takes e4. So at this moment I do have two defenders, so it's not a problem, but I don't want to keep my pieces just defending the pawn, and I played this f3, never play f3. So yeah, f3 is a weakening move, but I figured out it should be okay. But this did give some tactical opportunities to my opponent, because if you imagine that this queen is not here, then well, this could be a tactic, just to give up the pawn with a check, hitting the rook and the check and so forth. So this creates many tactical opportunities, and I need to be very careful from now on. And here my opponent took a lot of time to think and finally played b6, which if you think about, he doesn't have many good moves, but here is a trick. So for example, if I would be greed for a pawn, so I could take the pawn, he takes back, I take the pawn, and now my queen is distracted. And he could now think about combinations like knight takes f3, because if I take, then I get the check and I lose the rook. Or maybe even knight takes g2, because again, if I take, then he takes with check and I'm losing the rook. So here, after this b6, I need to be careful not to get my queen distracted. So here I played queen to c4 with the check and also removing the queen from this pin. He played king to h8, And now again I have several moves at disposal. I can try hitting the queen here on the outpost, but I don't see any continuation because I don't have this check. So I decided to play knight to g3 with the idea of hitting the queen and also winning this bishop. So after knight to g3 I can jump to h5 and then challenge the bishop. And this was also one of the ideas behind this queen to c4 check, because I was already here thinking about this maneuver. But now in this position he could just tuck away his bishop. But after the check he has to play king to h8. So now this maneuver makes sense because he cannot save the bishop, and once this bishop is gone, then this pawn will fall very soon. So this is why I played knight to g3. He retreated the queen to g6, stopping me from playing knight to h5, but also giving me the opportunity to play actively. So I played rook to d6, hitting the queen, and he immediately, almost at the same instant, played this queen to b1. And I did see this move, so he was probably thinking that he might win my bishop, but this is not a problem because I can just play queen to c1. So I did predict this outcome, and this is fine with me. I have more active pieces, so if he wants to exchange queens, I'm happy. And now he got a little bit greedy, so he went taking my pawns, and you can see when he took, for example, here on a2, his queen is completely out of the game. And he also has some pawns hanging. So it's not like he's winning some material, he's just deactivating his queen. So now I took this pawn, c takes b6, he took back, and now it will be a good time to play knight to h5, and this is what Engine wants me to play, but I didn't play this right away. First I took the pawn, so rook takes c6, he took this another pawn, and at this moment he's a pawn up, but it doesn't really matter because I have a strong initiative. And now finally I played knight to h5, and I did miss a tactics here, which I almost saw, but I didn't see it all the way through. So I did see that this pawn is potentially a target. So the right move here would be to temporarily sack the bishop, and now when he takes back, then I can give check by taking the pawn, and wherever he moves the king, then I can play queen takes g5 with a check, and now I will win one of the minor piece back. And I mean, if he's not careful, he can even get checkmated with moves like knight to h5 and so forth. So this was a nice tactics which I have missed. So I played knight to h5 here, and now he has a nice tactics which he missed, and the tactics is rook takes f3, because I cannot take, because I can take, then there is a check and mate here. So this was a nice tactics from his side, but he also missed this. As you can see, we both have 3 minutes, and this looks like a potentially long endgame, or at least the attack from my side for which he will need time to respond. So this is why we are missing tactics, we are just low on time. So he played knight to f5 here, I guess protecting his bishop, so when I take the bishop, he doesn't have to take back with the knight, and then again I have a tempo. And maybe also he decided that his knight on h4 is not the best piece on the board. So I continued just capturing the bishop, and now I was expected that he will maybe capture with the knight, but he captured with the king at the end. Okay, and now finally this pawn I can take. So the whole game I was making pressure on this pawn, and finally it's free to take. And now I take this with check, and he played king to h7. And now again, being a little bit low on time, I didn't see the clear way forward. So here I just played rook to c7 check. And this move is marked as a blunder by the engine, because the best move here is something which looks like a quiet move, but it's actually very strong. And this is queen to d2. So this is so good move that this move is a blunder. Okay. So the idea is just to bring all the pieces to the attack. It's a very simple idea. There is no straightforward victory here. I cannot give you a sequence in which I deliver checkmate or win material, but just the fact that my attack here is so strong makes this move a very strong move. So I can bring the queen with the tempo, then I have the queen, I have rook, and I have bishop. They are all coordinated in the attack, and something good has to come out of this. But okay, I didn't see this, and this is maybe the biggest learning point, the biggest lesson of this game is age-old Morphy's lesson, bring all the pieces in the attack. So when I do have the attack, his king is exposed, my rook, my bishop is active. So just to play the move which activates a piece and brings it to the attack is the best move. So I will try to remember this for future. So I played rook to c7 check. He blocked with his rook because it's defended by the queen. And again, I just didn't see anything better here. I have 1 minute on the clock. And I did see that I can win this pawn. So I decided to go for it, and I thought this would be a draw. So I took the rook, he took back with the queen, and now I played queen to c2, threatening to win this knight, with the moves like g4 for example. So he has to play this queen to g6, but now I have this check, and when he blocks check, I take the knight, he takes back with the queen, and now I win this pawn. So like I said, I saw this, I saw that I can win the pawn, and I just went for it. I didn't have time to do anything else. And now this should be a draw. The only thing black has to do here is to avoid trading queens. And as long as the queens are on the board, this is a draw. I just cannot win this with just one pawn extra, and this pawn is part of the chain, so it's not like some outward pawn. And once these pawns go forward, he can just perpetual check me and so forth. Okay, so it's his move, so he starts with a check, queen to a1. I move my king up, trying to protect it from checks, but he does have queen to e5 check. I have to go back, and now he plays queen to e1 check, and now I block the check. And if he trades the queen, then I will be a pawn up in the king at pawns endgame, and this is almost always a winning for the side with the extra pawn. Unless there is some specific configuration in which the weaker side can draw, but I don't think this is such a position. So he went back to e5, and now I deliver check from b1. He played king to g7, queen to b7 check, and now here he played a losing move, and he allowed the only thing he shouldn't allow, this is the exchange of queens, by playing king to g6. And now I have queen e4 check. Now the exchange of queen is forced, so we have exchanged queens, and now I'm just winning. So the game went king to f6, king to h2, king to e5, king to g3, king takes e4, king to g4, and you can see that now I have the opposition, and also I'm closer to his pawns than he is to my pawns, because, well, this square is taken, so even if my king isn't here, he's not so close as I am. So he played king to e5, king to h5, king to f4, going for my pawns, but too late. King takes h6, king to g3, king takes g5, king takes g2, h4. And this is game over. We just played several more moves, and here he resigned. So yeah, like I said, an interesting game. Unfortunately, in the most interesting positions, I didn't have enough time to access them, so I just played this safely. I had the better position almost the whole game, and in the end I even managed to be up in material, but at the end I did manage to win only by the gift of my opponent. But this is chess. I got, I think, 9 rating points out of this game, so I'm getting closer to my goal. Thank you for sticking with me, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers!